We go to the phones, and joining us this morning, Congressman Jodey Arrington. Congressman, good morning. How are you?
Good morning, Chad. I just stepped out from a meeting with the Republican conference, and I'm very proud of what I'm hearing from my colleagues and our collective message to leadership, and leadership's doing a good job of listening. And you know, I think the unanimous message and position is there's a time to stand your ground and fight. There are times that you got to work with folks, and the tactical, best tactical choice is not always optimal, but it's you got to weigh a lot of factors in these decisions. Shutting the government down costs taxpayer money. It's disruptive, but 75% of the government's already funded, and this is about national security. This is not just some trivial matter. This is about keeping the American people and our families, especially those in the border states, safe. This was the central component of the president's agenda. This was a mandate from the people, and so you know, we're rallying. I don't know what the ultimate decision will be, but I got to tell you, we need to stand and fight on this one, and we need to put $5 billion in, send it back to the Senate so that it's definitive that it's Chuck Schumer and the Democrats. We haven't done that yet. I think that'd be a good first step, and I hope the president stands firm on it. I really do.
Well, I mean, it as of right now, it doesn't appear that way. You know, the Senate, they've passed this stopgap spending measure. What's going to happen in the House with this? Are y'all going to send it back and say no deal? We want. Are there the votes in the House right now to get $5 billion for the border wall?
Well, I think there are, but I'm hearing from others that, and this is going to be outrageous for your listeners. It's outrageous for me to hear this, but they believe that there are some people that we can't even get back here to cast a vote. I think that is BS. I think that is worse than just abdicating your responsibility. I think it's betrayal. I think we ought to pass something to stop paying people who stop doing their job. And I just don't buy that we can't get folks to come back and run through the tape for the people who elected them and for the country they love, if that's true, if they ran to represent their people and if they truly love their country. And I believe the majority do, but I just don't buy that. So that's one bit of information that's being thrown out. But here's the thing. At the end of the day, we'll never know who would come back and who wouldn't, who would vote and who wouldn't, if we don't put it on the floor and hold members accountable for their vote. So I hate to quote the Washington Post, but they have a saying, democracy dies in darkness. Let me tell you where democracy does die in darkness. When members aren't held accountable for their position, and then they own it and they explain it to the people back home as to why they voted one way or the other. This is too important. It's too serious. It's national security, and it's a crisis. And we need to put it on the floor of the House. We need to vote for it. And then and I think if you do that, Chad, I think you got the votes. You send the $5 billion funding measure for Homeland Security to the Senate, and you put it on them. No budget, no barrier, no Santa. That's my position.
Visiting with Congressman Jodey Arrington, if the stopgap measure that the Senate passed is what ultimately comes to the House floor today, what's going to happen? Are y'all going to pass that and then wait? Because, I mean, I look at that. You got 2 weeks.
It won't pass, Chad.
It won't
pass today. Listen, I'm listening to my colleagues, and we're talking together and to leadership. I do not see the support, man. I just don't see it. I don't know. This is one where the members are driving it as they should, and I would say the leaders are listening, and I just don't see it. I mean, whether they're listening or not, you put it on. I don't see that CR passing. Now, the Democrats will all vote for it. I just don't know you'll get the critical mass of 25 or 30 Republicans. I haven't seen that number.
So you're against it?
Yeah, I oppose just punting or kicking the can, that punting on third down. We don't do that.
Well, I just look at it if we wait until February to get another spending bill passed, the Republicans are out of power. I mean, you've got Nancy Pelosi taking over, and you're going to get something even worse than what you could get right now, even if you do shut down the government. Am I wrong?
I think. Well, no, I think you're right. I think one argument is that if you shut it down when she's got the gavel, the chances of winning the shutdown fight and it being on the Democrats may improve that. But I just think that whether that calculation's accurate or not, I don't want to play the political chess game here. I just want to do what's right. And I think there's a time to put the political sort of metrics in your calculations. But the first thing you got to do is what's right. And I think the president was right by saying we're going to hold the line. Listen, if Schumer, who's already voted for 700 miles of fencing, and the Democrats who've already voted for $1.6 billion in the wall funding in the last budget, I just want to see them move and compromise. They've done zero compromising. That's how you govern. We all have to compromise some. That's part of it. You don't have to compromise your core principles. You don't have to compromise moral imperatives. But to govern is to find common ground. And we, the Republicans and this president, have done that. The Democrats have done zero, and they ought to stay here and work through Christmas until we get some movement from them.
Visiting with Congressman Jodey Arrington. Congressman, we're going to place you on hold when we come back. We've got much more to get into, get your opinion on, and then we'll also preview what we could see coming up in 2019. Chad Hasty Show, KFYO. Visiting with Congressman Jodey Arrington this morning. And, Congressman, another action taken by the administration, which surprised a lot of folks and have made some listeners are okay with it. Some listeners are not happy with it. This bump stock ban that was signed off by the administration. What are your thoughts on it? Do you think it was the right move to make, or is this something that needs to go through Congress when taking a look at the Second Amendment?
So my position on that is that the decisions to regulate firearms should be done so through congressional action, not decisions by any particular administration, whether you're Republican or Democrat, or by any bureaucrat at the ATF. Now, on the substance of the issue, if some apparatus turns a gun into a machine gun, it ought to be overseen in that same manner. I'm not for banning. Here's the problem. It's this slippery slope thing.
Right.
You know, ask the folks living along the border who have to go to the government for a pistole, and the cartels have all these weapons, automatic weapons, and they're outgunned, outmanned, and they're trying to get out of this terrible situation for their families. It's a sacred thing, that Second Amendment. And so Congress ought to be the ones acting on this, not the administration. I know where the president's heart is, and I appreciate it, because if something does make a gun fire and effectively work like a machine gun, an automatic weapon, then it should be overseen or regulated or whatever in that same manner. But that isn't a decision the ATF can make. Look, the ATF and the Obama administration said they didn't have the authority legally to regulate the bump stock or to ban it. So I think that's clear. Congress has to do it. It's hard to pass laws. It's hard, especially to do things that affect our fundamental rights. And the founders made it difficult for a reason. So I would like that decision and those discussions and that debate to occur in Congress, not through executive actions.
The president announced, I think initially on via Twitter, that troops were going to be pulled out of Syria. There are some Republicans that are okay with this. There are a lot of Republicans who were very upset about this last night, and even on the other side, people are split. I think there are just 4 or 5 different camps on this. Where are you at? Do you think this was the right move to make? It seems as though the president went against some of the wishes of his senior advisors on this.
I think there's 2 issues. One is the process. I think the president ought to coordinate with his own team, cabinet officials, and with Congress on an issue of such great import. Okay, and I think he should do that. I think he's been an incredibly strong and effective president and commander-in-chief on foreign policy and national defense.
Right.
And I think without him, I mean, we had one president called the ISIS the JB, and they spread like wildfire.
Yeah. And
we've got one president that unleashed the military to do their job, and we've effectively annihilated ISIS. So I give the president high marks here, but I think we got to leave a presence to keep Iran in check. They're funding Hezbollah and giving them weapons to attack our greatest ally in the Middle East in that area, Israel.
Yeah.
So I need to see more details, but I'm hopeful that he will have a presence and a check on Russia, Iran, Syria, ISIS, because that battle is not over, and I need to hear more and read more and know more about that. About the presence he would leave behind.
Yeah, whenever I hear the Iranians and the Russians are happy about U.S. action being taken, I get worried about that. And I look at this, and just from what I've been reading, this would possibly create a vacuum that would not be good for U.S. interest. And that worries me. And then I take a look, okay, if we're removing troops from Syria, why not Afghanistan too?
Yeah, well, listen, this was, remember Obama came in and pulled out of Iraq, and that became a hotbed for ISIS and a stronghold. And so, look, I get the president's reluctance to be caught up in intractable conflicts in the Middle East. I like that about him. I think that's a good principle. But the reality is, if we don't lead, Vladimir Putin's of the world will fill the void, and so you've got to keep a check. I think the Kurds in the Northeast are counting on us. Our allies there in Israel are counting on us, and I think for stability in that crazy part of this world, America has to have a presence. And so maybe you can draw down troops, but I don't think you can just up and leave altogether.
Yeah. Okay. To looking ahead here in a couple of weeks. Unfortunately, Nancy Pelosi will hold the gavel in the House of Representatives. What does that mean for the House? What do you think we will see, if anything, come out of the House that will get through to the president?
Well, I hope we continue to advance bipartisan legislation to support and serve our veterans. I've got a few pieces of legislation that I think could pass and that have bipartisan support. I think infrastructure is going to be important. We've got this great farm bill, this pro-growth, free market policies of lower taxes and regulations that have lit our economic engine. And we need labor and we need infrastructure to continue that growth. So I can see how that might be a bipartisan opportunity. So I want to be productive. I'm not going to conduct myself any differently than I did the first term. I laid a great groundwork, got great relationships with Democrats, and where I can work with them, I will. But I'll also fight for the policies, the conservative policies, and the West Texas values that are reflected in the legislation that we passed. And I will fight to keep those in play because I think they're helping us be a safer, stronger, freer nation. And so I think you got to know when to, it's like the Nehemiah sword and shovel leader. You got to know when to fight. You got to know when to get that shovel and go to work.
Congressman?
And plenty of time to do both.